Follow me and DM me on Insta. This is why you should never hook up with a man. Just kidding, this is also karma on my end too. So I was starting my freshman year of college and I was going into it with a girlfriend of 3 years. I was no longer emotionally invested in the relationship, but I wanted to keep up appearances back home. However, I knew that when I went to college, I wanted to hook up with someone. And not just anyone, I wanted to hook up with a man. Because I had literally never done that before. So I went to freshman orientation and went to a meet and mingle and ended up meeting a guy named Logan. At least that's what we'll call him. He was so cute and so charming and we were able to bond over the nerdiest things, which is stuff that my girlfriend always made me feel extremely childish about. Logan made me feel validated and understood. This is when he told me he had a girlfriend too. Not long after, he ended up telling me he had a crush on me and wanted to talk about it in person. So I went up to his room and he sang to me, held me, and made me feel loved. Then I spent the night and, the next day he took me out to lunch with his parents and then I decided to have a conversation with him about what we should do. We both agreed we should just keep acting like us and doing our thing, but I felt super bad and super uncomfy that he had a girlfriend. So one day, my girlfriend found out and contacted his girlfriend. Storytime part 2 on why you should never sleep with a man. Again, just kidding, I am also to blame. Once my girlfriend found out I was cheating, she told Logan's girlfriend too. That night, she blew up Logan's phone telling him everything she had been told, and he literally told his girlfriend that I did sleep with someone on campus, but it wasn't him. He said that I just told my girlfriend it was him just to spite her. I obviously should have seen this as a massive red flag, as if there weren't a million others. Of course, his girlfriend wanted to hear my side, so I just went along with whatever Logan said, even though I felt awful and I have no idea why I went along with something so low. And after that, we still kept sleeping together. And even though I had broken up with my girlfriend by now, he still acted like he was in a perfect relationship with his girlfriend. He also let me know that this was not his first time two-timing before. So his cycle was just continuing. He ended up breaking things off with me on their 1 year so he could spend time with her and completely ghosted me. Even after telling me that he still wanted to be close like we were before our affair. I know what I did was wrong, I'm not defending myself, but I still think it's shitty and they're still together. If you guys have a story that you'd like to share, follow me and DM me on Instagram. Make sure you always verify who randomly adds you on Snapchat or you might accidentally send a nude to your substitute teacher. We're gonna call this guy James because that's his real name. And I got a notification one day that James had added me on Snapchat. I guess he added me in the section where you can find suggested friends, but I immediately recognized his name. Even though I was a lot younger, he had went to my high school prior and I had even watched him in a play. I was studying drama at the time and it was just at a local theater. But it didn't take long after James added me for his Bitmoji to start. It was until I walked into my drama class. Part 2 to accidentally sending my substitute teacher a nude. Like I said, it was radio silence from James for weeks. And like how I previously talked about my passion for drama, I was very involved in drama at school. Our group was due to have a performance in the next few weeks. But sadly, our teacher had fallen and broken her leg, so she wasn't going to be able to teach us for a bit. So they had to call in an emergency substitute. My friends and I were rehearsing one day when we were told that our new teacher was on his way. We were told to keep practicing and that he'd come up and introduce himself and help us with our performance. That's when he walked in, and if you can't guess yet, it was James. When he saw me, he went white as a ghost and I felt sick. I mentioned to one of my friends what had happened and she was like, "Girl, you have to say something." But I didn't really want that reputation, so I stayed quiet. He even mentioned to our class that he had a girlfriend and that her birthday was coming up soon. It felt so awkward, but eventually a new substitute took over. And I have no idea what happened to James. He tried to Snapchat me after this, but I ended up blocking him. I was also about 16 at the time and he was about 22. And I don't know if he did this with other students. But James, we hope you see this. And if anyone has a story that they'd like to share, follow me and DM me on Instagram. Have you ever had 17 girlfriends, 2 fiancés, 1 wife, and 4 kids? Yeah, me neither, but Jason freaking Collier did. So let's get into this case. So Jason Collier, who was the chief of police in a small town in Texas, ended up matching with a girl on a dating site. Her name was Cecily and they hit it off really well. She was a mom, she was divorced, and he presented himself as a really good, godly man that was gonna take over. He offered to take care of everything, pay for everything, and then eventually proposed over the phone a couple months later. She accepted, and from then on out, he was referring to her as Mrs. Collier. Cecily got a little bit suspicious that he might be using her, so she went to go do some investigating herself. And on the police website, it listed him as being married and having kids. So she was like, okay, something doesn't add up. She confronted him and essentially was like, hey, what's this about? He was like, oh my God, no, I'm divorced. Like, we're getting married, baby. I love you. And he even gave her the annulment papers as proof, but they were all forged. So Cecily immediately took to Facebook. And that's when other girls started to come forward. And man, was a timeline created. Like for part 2. Okay, part 2 with the Jason Collier case, because this ish is crazy. So this man was literally juggling every single relationship possible that you could have. Like, save some women for the rest of us, Mr. 17 girlfriends, 2 fiancés, 1 wife. Anyways, as you guys should know, this is entirely illegal. So he obviously had to resign from the police force, and then he was arrested later that day. The charge was for tampering with a government document with the intent to harm. And when I say a whole binder of women came forward with screenshots, but at least he gifted them all coffee makers. Follow me on Instagram for more content. And me on Instagram. Manage it. Story time about how my brother almost beat up some 5th graders. So we had all spent the day out at my family's ranch, and I had brought my boyfriend, Jerry, out to see it. Little backstory, it was built in like the 1920s, and then rebuilt in the early 2000s, and now it's under construction again. So we decided to drive home. We're coming back, I'm feeling tired, and I'm also kind of blind. So my brother decides to take over driving.
Nah, it was really because your driving sucks.
Okay, well, whatever. Anyways, we get close to the neighborhood and we start to pull up. And as we're going down the street next to our house, the car hits a big thud. And I literally thought my brother had just like hit someone on their bike or something.
Yeah, I thought I gained 20 points for hitting someone.
But then we saw a bunch of people hiding start to run back to their house. And that's when we knew that they had thrown something at our car.
Yeah, and they didn't know I was packing my heater that day. I had my Glock on my side.
Okay, chill. My brother literally turns to my boyfriend and goes, "Hey, do you know how to fight?"
Well, in my defense, Jeremy seems too nice.
Jeremy says yes, and then they whip the car into the driveway. Like for part 2. Storytime part 2 about my brother almost beating up some 5th graders. So they pull into the driveway and then hop out of the car ready to fight and started running after who we thought were high schoolers. I went to go look at the damage on my car and it was just really wet. It kind of looked like my car had been egged. And that's when other cars started to pull up too. And they were like, "Hey, my car was just hit." They were looking to talk to the people's parents. And I was like, "Yeah, us too." We rang the doorbell. No one was home, but the door literally just swung open. So my brother and my boyfriend were yelling upstairs. Because everyone's outside waiting, I call the non-emergency police. And my brother calls another friend as backup. So his friend told his work that he had a family emergency and left. Sometime during this, the kids came back downstairs and locked their front door. So I knocked on it and was like, "Hey, you guys should just apologize." Because the police were kind of already on their way. And that's when they opened the door and we saw how tiny they were. Literal 5th graders. I honestly felt kind of bad, but it probably scared them into not doing this to anyone else. My brother's friend pulled up and he had obviously gone out of work for no reason.
I was just seeing if he was gonna be true or not.
But didn't you end up paying him $35? So put a finger down if half of your biological family is now behind bars for plotting your murder. So when I was 14, I made the realization that I was pansexual. I at the time did not know my own family's feelings about sexuality. So I decided to come out to them. But nothing could have prepared me for the extreme homophobic reaction that was in store. I just want to put a massive trigger warning over the rest of this story. After coming out to them, I literally remember nothing. I woke up completely foggy and out of it in a hospital. I was then let know by the doctors that I had a major head concussion and possible amnesia. Obviously, I was entirely confused and had no idea what happened. So that's when I was let know that all 3 of my parents, I have a stepdad as well, were in custody. They were being charged with abuse and assault. And then 2 of my aunts were also taken in for tampering with a crime scene. And literally the only reason that I was even found was because the neighbors heard me scream and called the cops. And now I was a ward of the state and had foster parents. Once the trial started, that's when all the crazy details about the crime came to light. Follow me on Insta for part 2. Storytime part 2 to my biological family plotting my murder. So this is where the trial began. Thankfully, my neighbors not only heard me, but they also watched some of the events occur through the back door. They watched my family remove a glass gun cabinet, which apparently my head went through. They assumed that I was going to die, so my aunts came over and started to scrub the entire place with bleach. And when asked why exactly this incident happened, my stepfather with no hesitation stated, "Because that no good for anything piece of ish thinks she has a choice over who she sleeps with." My aunts were sentenced 15 to 20 years and had to pay up to 10 grand in fines. Both my stepfather and my biological father got life in prison, and my mom got 60 to life for her assistance in the whole thing. She also didn't notify the authorities and failed to appear for her first trial. After the trial was over, I ended up getting adopted by 2 amazing men who live in Russia, which is my home country. They later adopted my siblings, and I'm now 24 with an amazing career and family. And even though I've changed my entire name, my biological family still tries to reach out. If you have a story time you'd like to share, DM. So I can't really tell if it's romantic or not that my boyfriend put me up as the prize to a race without me knowing. To give some backstory, we were dating on and off for about 1.5 years. And we'll just go ahead and call this man Brad. We met in health class and he was kind of an a-hole, but I honestly fell so hard for him. Well, around this time, he sold his old car and got a beautiful 2015 black Charger. And let me tell y'all, I would feel like such a baddie when he'd come pick me up. And when I moved an hour away, he would still come pick me up weekly and take me to nice hotels. Well, one day he was talking to me about how obsessed his friends are with me, which I thought was so strange, but he was like, "Yeah, I showed them your picture. They all think you are so fine." And I guess they all talked about how they wish they could have a chance with someone like me and blah, blah, blah. And that's when he decided to enter his fancy little car into a race. He asked me if I wanted to come see him perform, but we were in the dead of winter, so I was like, probably not. That's when he started begging me and told me that the prize was really important. So I decided to go. Follow my Insta. Story time part 2 to my boyfriend putting me up as the prize for a race without me knowing. So when I showed up, I had a feeling that the prize was pretty important. So when I finally saw him, I was like, hey, so what exactly is the prize? And he gave me the weirdest look and he was like, babe, you know how all my friends think you're hot, right? I was like, I mean, sure. And he goes, well, I told them whoever wins gets to be your boyfriend. So I was like, WTF, Brad? Why would you do that? And he just looks at me and goes, don't worry, I'll win. And I was like, well, you better. So I literally stood out there in the cold watching a race that I could barely see. There was someone really tall in front of me. My heart almost dropped several times because I kept hearing Brad is gonna lose. And then I pushed the guy in front of me out of the way and saw Brad cross the finish line. One of his friends actually came up to us after the race and claimed that Brad cheated to win. He was probably just a sore loser, but we celebrated the rest of the night. If you guys have a story you'd like to share, follow me and DM me on Instagram. Raise your hand if you've ever had a friend expose you to all of Instagram. So this girl we can call Kendall and I had been best friends for 9 years. And ever since we were kids, she would kind of cycle in and out of being a fake friend or not. I really believed the best in Kendall and would always forgive her for the things she would do and move past it. But this came around to bite me. So fast forward to May of 2019, I started dating a guy that we can call Day. He was really cool to be around, but he had some childish habits. We really wanted, doing the nasty to be special in our relationship. So we waited 8 months to do it. And when we started, he would always bother me about recording it. I always felt really bothered by the idea of there being a recording of that. But about the millionth time of him asking me, I agreed. I thought he loved me and wouldn't expose me. So we did it, and I ended up showing it to 2 of my friends. But I avoided showing it to Kendall because that just gave me a weird feeling. Eventually, Kendall and I hit one of our cycles where we weren't talking again. And during this time, Day and I got so toxic that we decided to break up. And during this breakup, Day decided to send the video to Kendall. That's when this video ended up on the story of someone's Finsta page. Like for part 2. Storytime part 2 of my best friend exposing me doing the nasty on Instagram. So Day literally sent Kendall over the video of us doing the nasty while Kendall and I were in the middle of our argument. And on someone's close friend's story on their Finsta, they uploaded the video. Then after that, it was on 2 other exposing pages. Everyone from my school saw it and people from other schools in my town saw it, and then my family had seen it. This was genuinely one of the hardest things that I ever had to go through. People would talk about me, make pages to bash me, and I lost so many friends from this. I was at my lowest and completely depressed, but I had my close friends and family there to get me through it. And now I've officially sued both Kendall and Day. The court dates have not occurred yet because of the pandemic, but I'm doing much better and working on my own little business and trying to leave the whole situation in 2020. If you guys have a story that you'd like to share, follow me and DM me on Instagram. Story time about the craziest party my boyfriend ever went to. So his best friend TJ called him saying that there was a party going on in another town. Him, having just went through a breakup, was really upset and was in the mood for a party. So TJ picked up him and his friend Ava and went to the town to pick up another friend who played basketball. It was about 9 o'clock when they got there and they had all already pre-gamed with Henny. And because he was so upset, the alcohol was hitting. He had also listened to hella Drake. And all the guys were just in the mood for a fight. And Jeremy honestly thought Ava would shut things down if it got too crazy. But little did he know. So the party was at this massive rented building, and they had to wait 30 minutes for someone to come and let them inside. However, Ava went in ahead of them because a guy thought she was cute. And once they walked in, they saw just how nice the place was. Everything smelled of alcohol and weed, and the place had an amazing view. There were gorgeous windows all around, and so many celebrity basketball players showed up. So they knew that they were in and they were gonna go get more drinks at the bar. But TJ was so drunk he was gone. And his friend inside the party was already hitting on a girl. Turns out she was someone else's girl. So they knew a fight was about to go down. Stay tuned and follow us on Insta. Part 2 to my boyfriend's crazy party story. I never gave a name for the guy inside the party, but we can call him Michael. So Michael was literally flirting with this other man's girl. And for some reason these guys were like, yeah, let's fight. I don't know how boys think. Jeremy's literally hyping himself up in the bathroom. And then he hears screaming, so he knows it's time to go down. And as he stumbles out of the bathroom, ready to fight, he sees Michael and the girl's boyfriend beating each other up. But his friend group never jumped in, so TJ and him stayed back. Until security jumped in. That's when they realized the guy that Michael was fighting was probably important, because they kicked them out and not the other guys. So while they're getting escorted out, TJ starts talking back, which is when he knew things were about to get real. They knew that the other guys were getting pissed off and threatening them. The guys literally started shooting at them. So the bullets were inches away from hitting Jeremy and his friends. So Michael jumped into the front seat of the car and started to drive away. So ultimately, Ava had the best night. And she asked all of them how their night went. And they were all literally like, it was chill, you didn't miss anything. But oh well, if you guys have a story you'd like to share, follow me and DM me on Instagram.